It is that which Mrs. Lord and I dreamed it would be. It is that which we envisioned. Our desire was to create a park as a public resting place and a museum for the display of my natural history collection. Oh, how grand this all has become.
The Elgin Public Museum. Spearheaded in 1904 by Mr. and Mrs. G.P. Lord as a community effort to build a museum for all the people. Today, the museum, with its active schedule of family-oriented events, is indeed a place for everyone. As a cultural, educational, and recreational resource for individuals, groups, and families, the function of the museum is to explain the physical environment and man's adaptation to it. It also promotes an understanding and appreciation for other cultures and how the decisions they have made affect us. Further, the museum provides educational services to regional school systems and to the general public by encouraging intellectual interests and curiosity. Elgin, at the turn of the last century, didn't have a museum. And without the vision and driving force of G.P. Lord, who commissioned local prominent architect David E. Postle to design a museum building befitting the community, the city may never have had this one. But construction on the building had just begun when Mr. Lord passed away. Although partially completed the following year as the Lord Memorial Museum, between 1907 and the late 1970s, the museum experienced a paradox of identities, but it also served its intended purpose as a natural history museum, first under the auspices of the Elgin Audubon Society, then the City of Elgin Parks and Recreation Department. And finally, as it stands today, the Elgin Public Museum, a non-profit corporation. It is one of the 5 non-university affiliated natural history museums in the state of Illinois and the only natural history museum in the Fox Valley area. The building is the oldest structure in the state built to house a museum and is still being visited by the public as it was almost 100 years ago. In 1992, the building was designated by the Elgin Heritage Commission as a city landmark.
Yes, is the pool open?
Oh, isn't it?
Hello and welcome to the Elgin Public Museum. I'm Brian Anderson with Elgin's citywide historic preservation organization, Abode. And today we're going to be looking at the Elgin Public Museum from a completely different perspective than that the ordinary and daily visitor would see. Since the opening of the new East Wing, the museum thought it important that the public know how, after nearly 100 years, we were able to match both the materials and craftsmanship of the original Renaissance Revival design with materials and construction techniques commonly used in buildings today. John Roberson is the architect who accepted the challenge to artistically match the original design with the new East Wing, and Stuart Beam is the general contractor who also accepted a challenge to realize that dream of matching the original design. Let's begin by talking about the fact that you obviously knew that from the onset, and for all practical purposes, you were working with a building that was 100 years old. John, what steps or procedures did you need to follow in the design stage to assure that in fact, there would be a complete and perfect match between the original building and the new East Wing?
Brian, what we had to start with is determining what materials are in the existing building. So therefore, we had to investigate old plans, as-built drawings, if you may, back from 1907, verify that we have Bedford limestone on the building, and also try to find a match for the brick. And that is a Roman brick. It's a little bit shorter and a lot longer than what a normal brick is. And we had to find a supplier for that. And we checked many brickyards and brick suppliers. We found one manufacturer that made that particular brick. The limestone had to be made and cut from a quarry. So that was relatively easy.
Stuart, there was an unfortunate interruption in the construction of this building due to the death of George P. Lord. However, decades after that, the intention was to complete, in part, this building using the same materials as originally used. As the general contractor, did you find that you had any difficulty locating those materials?
Absolutely. Some materials aren't being produced the same as they used to be. And one of the problems we had was mounting the existing tile on the roof. If you look at the roof outside right now today, it's hard to distinguish between the new roof and the old roof. The woodworking was produced by Fox Woodworking, and we matched the existing moldings and profiles as closely as possible. The balustrades, the handrails, the casings. The plasterwork, there's an archway between what used to be the window on the east side of the museum. Now they removed that and they continued the plaster archway through. And you can't tell by looking at it that half of that archway was there. They matched just perfectly.
Stuart, was there an ample supply of craftsmen and tradesmen, such as stonecutters and masons, plasterers and carpenters, willing and able to build in the mode required of this historic project?
Not really. There were plenty of people that are willing to do it, but able and having the technique, the use of the same type of materials. They don't use the same techniques necessarily these days. The process is still the same, but this is more intricate than what most of these plasterers are used to doing. The masonry, the Endicott brick, that Roman brick with the very tight joints, is very difficult to make it look right and proper, and along with the limestone.
John, as the design stage progressed and you began to formulate the construction documents, did you find it necessary to begin thinking about past methods and materials and to resurrect such methods and materials?
Modern construction is different than what was used at the time this building was constructed. We use a brick veneer and then an airspace, and then we have a concrete block backup. We might call that concrete masonry unit now.
Was it not possible to use the same methods, or was it simply not feasible?
I imagine we could have used the exact same methods, but it's not in use today. It would require concrete floors poured in place. We opted not to use that. We used a more expedient process. So we chose more common traditional methods nowadays than what was traditional 100 years ago.
Was there any compromise in the appearance of the finished product?
There's no compromise in the appearance of the exterior of the building. And I think that was one of the goals we set. We want the exterior of the building to look exactly like the original building that sits here. And we accomplished that.
Stuart, as you're the one who would have intimate knowledge of the new construction in this building, tell us the greatest challenge you faced and the most gratifying aspect of the job.
First of all, we maintained strict control on the front end. And with John's help, we did a lot of engineering on the fly. Okay, this is what we have, John, what can we do now? And he helped us there, and then shaving some whole courses we had to shave to make up a difference. And then from there, everything planed through nice. But maintaining strict control was the key.
John, did you find it necessary to make modifications in your construction documents in order to accommodate these imperfections of the old building?
Yes. Constantly I was called from the field saying, your documents show 8 feet 4 inches, let's say, for a dimension, and we have 8 foot 1.5. How do we make changes? And so I would just figure out what looked centered, what looked appropriate, and we would just discuss it, usually on phone, and I'd do a quick sketch and bring it out to the field, and we would modify what was being built.
John and Stuart, I want to thank you both for spending time with us at the present. It is indeed a crowning achievement that you both have added to the museum. If George P. Lord were alive today and were able to roam the halls and rooms of this museum, I wonder what his thoughts might be.
I tell you, I think he'd like to meet Joe the Mason.
Oh, excuse me. I didn't know you were also visiting my museum. Ah, yes, my museum. At least that's how it started out 100 years ago, as a place to display my natural history collection. Well, this museum, with its grand east wing, built in that same neoclassical style I originally chose, certainly has come a long way in the last 100 years. There seem to be so many new and exciting programs both for young and old. My, so many things to do here. You could stay all day. Look at all the marvelous collections and exhibits. I dare say they greatly exceeded anything I ever thought of. And the financial resources, well, they have propelled my museum, pardon me, your museum, far beyond anything I could have ever imagined. As residents of this fine community, you must be very proud of such a unique cultural and recreational resource. One can only wonder what the next 100 years will bring. Well, I must be about my business now. Goodbye now.